know Alder Steve is riding with you today. Alder Becky, who's a member of our Ag and Rural Affairs Committee. Dan Carpenter is here, one of our alders. You know, this is our second journey on the Fitchburg Rural Tour. So many people, I've heard of more than 100,000 people a year use this trail. And what's so unique about Fitchburg is just a mile north of here is Allied Drive in some of the most urban parts of Dane County. And just a half a mile south of here is very rural. You're going to see some majestic Holsteins in a very few moments here. And tell you how modern Fitchburg is with its agriculture. Last night, Steve Streck, who's here, who's chair of the Fitchburg Days, he and I both were on the phone with our good friend Pat O'Brien, who you may see later, making sure his cows survived the fireworks last night. Steve, we can both report that they did, right? So that's good. The point I say that is Fitchburg's journey is great. As you all know, and you're going to find out, 1830s, the Irish settlers came, and a few Dutch. If you talk to George Froman, he always reminds me of that. We have that great rural background of why people came here. But we also have modern agriculture as well. Roger Cohey is the chair of our Ag and Rural Affairs Committee. He is here. We're working hard to make sure that modern agriculture can still survive. And the reason that's happened is because Fitchburg's had this journey over the last 30 years. I want to thank a lot of people here, especially Alder Steve and others, for working on our comprehensive plan. We know where we're going to grow. We're going to stay rural in Fitchburg. And as a kid who grew up on a dairy farm in western Wisconsin, didn't bike a lot as a kid, probably explains why I'm not biking with you today, but it tells that I understand rural Wisconsin, I believe in that. And so many people are going to go down to Paoli and have fun on this trail. We're going to embark on a journey here this fall, Wade, where we're going to put signs up to talk about rural Fitchburg and what happened here, when, and how it's still relevant today. So I hope you enjoy yourself today. This is a great thing. We're going to continue doing this. Fitchburg is a city where you can have urban, suburban, and rural all within a bike trail. So have fun today. Wade, any directions you want to give here?
I'll do a quick
Thank you, friend.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Can camera see me back here? I don't want to get in front of everybody. Thanks, Sean, for making introductions. The reason I have the mic is we're doing televising the event, so when you see the camera, make sure you're smiling. You'll be on TV. Yeah. Again, my name is Wade Thompson. I'm a planner with the city. I work with a lot of rural landowners trying to preserve some of the agricultural heritage and identity of our city. Sean did mention a few people here today. We have Alder Steve Arnold, who represents the area we'll be biking through today. Alder Becky Baumbach also represents the area. Now myself, Steve, and Becky will be leading the tour today. So if you have any questions, we've got bright orange vests on and green vests, so just should be pretty visible. Just let us know if you have any questions. Additionally, we have Roger Cohey. Roger, where are you? Right behind me. Roger is the vice chair of our Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, the committee that's sponsoring this event today. So before we get started, I want to just talk about a few rules of the road. We'll be doing about 8 or 9 tour stops. We'll have various speakers from the city speak on at each stop. Now, what we're going to do is essentially have 2 groups. We have a fairly large crowd here today, so we'll have a group A and a group B. Group A will go with me. Group B will go with Steve and Becky. And actually, I want to pick on Ryan Watson and Abby Watson and Susie. Do you guys mind going with this group? I think that'll even things out pretty well. So I will lead Group A, we'll leave, and then Group B will leave about 3 minutes behind us. We just want to make sure we kind of spread things out along the trail. We do have a big group. Now, at each one of the tour stops, we will stop and regroup. So Group A will get there first, and then we'll stop and wait for Group B, and we'll listen to the speakers talk about Fitchburg. Along those same lines, you know, when you're on the trail, please use good trail etiquette, ride single file. We will have people going back and forth. So again, ride single file and be aware as you're on the trail.
You can ride 2 abreast if you stay to the right of the center line. So that will be okay, but not everybody is good with group riding and holding a line. So then you can ride single file.
And other riders will be probably riding faster, so they will be passing you on the left side, so just be aware of that as well. Again, if you don't have a trail pass, please get one before we start the tour. Please keep space between you and the rider ahead of you. If someone has to stop suddenly, want to make sure there's good stopping distance. We're going to be crossing highways, about 4 of them, just like in when you're in kindergarten. Stop, look both ways, and then cross the highway. And I guess please do feel free to come and go as you please. The tour is about 2.5 hours long, but if you get bored or you got things to do, you won't hurt our feelings if you take off. But some incentives.
The ice cream.
Exactly. Some incentive to make it to the end is we do have free ice cream from Dairy Queen, some Dilly bars. So that's some incentive to maybe make it through the tour. The last thing I want to point out is at the tour stops, you know, we're going to be a little bit crunched for space with a big group. So if you need to set your bike down and walk over to the speaker so you can hear them better, please feel free to do that. And again, you know, as we're at the stops, make sure you're not blocking the trail when we're stopping to talk about the various parts of Fitchburg's past and present agricultural identity. So I guess with that in mind, any final questions or comments?
One other thing, there is an organization called the Friends of the Badger Trail, and the head of that organization is right here behind us, Bill Hauda, and they promote the trail, and it's a great volunteer organization if anybody's interested.
Thank you, Becky. And one last thing, I'm sorry, just one quick thing. As we ride out, we're going to be riding south. On the way south, we're going to focus on the past of Fitchburg. We're going to look at a lot of elements of Fitchburg's agricultural past that kind of provide, you know, our identity and our history of what we have today. On the way back, we'll be looking at a lot of present day things. So just kind of keep that in mind. We'll be riding out, you know, kind of into the past and then coming back into the present. So that's kind of how we've organized the tour. So any final questions? The last stop will be the O'Brien Dairy Farm. And then we'll stop here for ice cream.
Does it come back?
We come back here, yeah.
Oh,
So it's just basically a down and back.
oh.
Yep.
Oh, so the farthest point though, the farthest point is Highway M, down by M.
We won't cross M.
Any other questions?
13,000 farmland acres in Fitchburg, Wade.
Yep, and we'll hit on that. Yep.
All right, I'm gonna show them. Get into it.
Again, we'll everybody, I guess, get all ready to go. We'll leave in about 2 minutes.
So which side?
Okay, so this is our first tour stop. I did forget to point out one thing on the way down. So when you bike back, make sure to look at it as we bike down. There was a couple openings on the right side of the trail, and if you look through one of those openings, there's an old stone barn called the McKenna Barn. So again, on your way back up, you can look out for that one. Steve will talk a little bit more about that, the history of that barn. But now we'll turn it over to Steve Arnold, again, our alder for the area, and he'll give you kind of a history of, early history of the Stoner Prairie area.
Thank you. One of the alders for the area. Always have to be careful about that, Becky. All right. I got a lot to read here. This is the history of Fitchburg, so I'll try to get through it quickly. So the archaeological record of the area known as the Four Lakes, that's Wabisa, Kaganza, Monona, and Mendota, is about 12,000 years long, and nearly continuous habitation by first the natives and then the European settlers. The Ho-Chunk Native American tribe figured prominently in the history of the Four Lakes and utilized a trail network that connected settlements, fisheries, and trade routes. One route ran from a settlement between Lake Monona and Lake Wabisa to the Sugar River through present-day Fitchburg onto the town of Montrose, where it connected with a north-south trail to Blue Mounds. The Illinois Central Railroad, which you're standing just next to, and later called the Illinois Central Gulf, operated a line in this corridor from Freeport, Illinois to Madison for over 100 years. The rail line was built in 1886 and transported grain and livestock to Chicago, stockyards, milk to the Pet Milk Condensery in Belleville, and passengers, with passenger trains running until 1942 and freight trains operating until the 1990s. This is the summit section of the trail from Freeport to just south of the Beltline, was closed for rail use in 1996 due to unsafe conditions. Lincoln and his opponent in the 1860 presidential election, Stephen Douglas, both were instrumental in establishing of the Illinois Central lines. They were ardent supporters of a bill granting federal land to the railroad, a bill signed into law in 1850 by Millard Fillmore. The rail lines constructed in the United States in the mid-19th centuries and early 20th centuries crisscrossed the country. They served as a catalyst for development of vast areas of the country, with the development following the lines, occurring in a manner similar to development along navigable waterways and stagecoach routes that came before the rail lines. And I would ask you, if you have any questions as I go along, just to shout out, because otherwise, give me a chance to catch my breath. The Badger State Trail is a 40-mile segment in south central Wisconsin from the Illinois border, passing through Monroe, Monticello, and Fitchburg. It connects to the Capital City, Military Ridge, and Sugar River trails, and the Madison Bikeway system. In Madison, the trail corridor continues along the southwest path to Camp Randall. At the Illinois border, it connects to the Jane Addams Trail, which continues to Freeport, Illinois. Some historical points of interest along the trail include the depot in Belleville, built in 1888, the woolen mill in Monticello, and the curved Stewart Tunnel south of Belleville. In 1997, the Wisconsin DNR began to look at the possibility of converting the rail line to a recreational trail under the Rails to Trails Act. In 2006, the master plan for the rail bed was approved by the Natural Resources Board, making it the Badger State Trail. The Badger Trail was opened to the public in July 2007. This paved section in Fitchburg, due to federal and state funding delays, actually opened in September 18, 2010. So we're standing on the Stoner Prairie. Settlements on the territorial roads in Fitchburg developed from west to east due to the marshy conditions closer to the Yahara River, with the first pioneers settling on Seminole Highway in the late 1830s. Prior to statehood in 1848, the area that was Fitchburg was part of the town of Rome, which also included Oregon, Dunn, and I think Rutland. Fitchburg separated from the town of Rome and became the town of Greenfield in 1847. They had to change the name because there was already a Greenfield in Milwaukee County. The land for the present-day Stoner Prairie, from Lacey Road, actually north of Lacey Road, to Vroman Road, stretches about 1 mile, and it's now known as the Stoner Prairie. It was named after the first European immigrant settler, John Stoner. He raised crops on 240 acres on that corner of the Lacey Seminole intersection. First farm operated by a European descent in Fitchburg, and the third in Dane County. He worked the fields on weekdays and lived in the fledgling settlement of Madison on weekends. The first permanent settlers were the Vromans, a Dutch family from New York State who arrived in the Madison area in the fall of 1836. And we'll see their homestead down the road here. Brothers Joseph and George were trained as carpenters and came to the area to work on the construction of the state capitol, settling on approximately 300 acres in the Stoner Prairie in 1839. Joseph was a prominent early Fitchburg resident, serving as the town's first chairman from 1847 to 1849. Other early settlers of the Stoner Prairie included the McKennas, the O'Briens, the Lacey's, and the Dunns. So now I'm going to talk about the McKenna barn, which we will point out as we go north of Lacey on the way back. Martin and Janet McKenna, an Irish family, established their homestead in 1856 on the east side of Seminole Highway, north of Lacey Road. In the 1860s and 70s, the McKennas developed a substantial stock farm by purchasing neighboring Yankee homesteads where the soil had become depleted from years of wheat farming. Yankees in those days were what they called settlers who had come from New York and New England, as opposed to Germany, Ireland, and other European countries directly. The McKennas built this stone barn on their Seminole Highway farm. You can see where the 20th century gambrel roof was added to make more room in the hayloft. The stone for the McKenna barn was probably quarried east in one of the quarries, west on Lacey Road. And other Yankee settlements, John Mance Stone Barn and House, now known as Quibby's Grove on Nesbitt Road, were also probably quarried from that stone. You can see a weathered gray building beyond the gas line pumping stations there on the right of the trail along Seminole Highway. That was previously just at the corner of Lacey Road, and it was a cheese factory. So that was built at the beginning of the 20th century, and was later, when it was no longer a cheese factory, it was moved and became part of the barn. We're nearly done here, folks. Similar to farmers in the area would bring milk to the Stoner Dairy Depot where we're standing. Where was the depot structure?
And literally, I'm passing around a photo. It's Beanville Station. So it was a little small railroad depot. It was literally where you see this rise right here, how it kind of rises up. The picture you're seeing is literally where the Beanville Station was. So
it was a three-sided platform, and the area farmers would bring their milk, and as the train would come by on the way to Madison or Belleville, they would load it up. Rufus Juliet, let's see. So this was on the soybean farm of Rufus Gillette in those days. Neighboring farmers painting Beanville across the station as a Halloween prank in 1916. Milk was loaded onto the trains at the station, shipped to Madison and elsewhere. That station was closed in 1838. And I think that's it. Any questions about the history of this area?
How do you spell the Stoner family name?
Stoner, S-T-O-N-E-R. This is one of the O'Brien brothers' homes, and this is the other one, and we'll be talking about that on the way back in the present-day Fitchburg agriculture segment. I will say one more thing. This area, as you can see, is super flat. It was a glacial outwash plain, and it actually drains to the south through that gap. And it's one of the things that limits settlement in this area is we cannot get gravity sewer from here to the Nine Springs plant. So this area is slated for permanent agriculture in our comprehensive plan. Anything else?
I just want to add one thing too, and kind of a linking to the present day aspect of the city of Fitchburg. If you go to our Great Dane pub, just on Fishcatcher Road up here, there's a beer called Stoner Wheat, I believe. So again, that beer is reflective of the city of Fitchburg's past. So,
wheat farming this was originally wheat farm, and back in the day they didn't understand that if you cropped wheat year after year after year, you'd suck all the nutrients out of the cycle, and so there was a wheat bust. And later we would discover agronomists discovered that the corn and soybeans rotation would keep the soil fertile. So that's what we do today for dairy farming. All right, so we're...
question? Yeah, I believe there was and I forget the exact details, but pretty much the Native Americans had ceded all their land by 1840 through treaty. And I think soon after, there was a few scattered settlements until that time. But then I think by 1850, pretty much all Native Americans were out of the area.
So the question was, what was the arrangement under which the Native Americans gave up the land?